Hello, and I am the CAD Queen, Kate Leipold, Principal Lecturer at RIT, and I'm excited to show you some things here in Onshape. I have 20 years experience teaching Creo in Onshape here at RIT, and one of the projects that we work on is a wind chime machine. And so I'm going to do a quick demo on how we get some of that geometry started. We're going to start with a sketch on the front plane. And because these wind chimes are so predictable, we can use a lot of variables to do this. So I'm going to start with not a line, but a midpoint line. And this is going to be a construction line, which gives us really a center line. Center lines don't matter how long they are, so we can take advantage of that. And I have, again, my midpoint line, and I can do this. So as I start typing in here, if I type a hashtag, I can get this option for a new variable. So this is going to give me the length of my chime, and I'm going to save it as a variable. And this particular one happens to be the D5 chime. And if I look that up on my tubular wind chime dimension, a D5 is 19.5 inches long, so 19.5. And I'm going to type in description chime length. Okay, so now we're associating that with the length of the sketch, and I have a 19.5 inch line. And if I really wanted to, I could make this come up here. I could even use H to make those the same length. Okay, it's still blue because it doesn't have the diameter yet, so we're going to add the diameter on next. And I'm going to go from the outside to the center line. And if I place it here, that's essentially giving my radius, but if I slide it over here, I can get the full diameter. I am working with nominal 3/4 inch EMT thin wall tube, so that's giving me a diameter of 0.922. And if I really wanted to work with other sizes, I could build that in as a variable. In fact, let's do that. Let's type in the hashtag for a new variable. Let's call this OD. Let's leave the value and give it a dimension or a description of outer diameter. And actually, I'm going to just write inches, although it says it there under values. Okay. So now we are fully defined in our sketch, and we can use this sketch to create a revolve. This is going to be a thin wall revolve. So essentially, this is my sketch, and my revolve axis is here. So it's spinning that line around, but it's adding a wall thickness. We've got three different ways to add wall thickness. We can add it inside, we can add it outside, or we can add it to the midplane. We're going to add it to the inside, and we're told that nominal wall thickness for 3/4 EMT is 0.049. Again, I could build this as a variable if I needed. Okay, and there is the start of my tube. Okay, this is steel, so I can give it a material of steel. What we've done sometimes is we've actually gone in and we've used, there it is, the Young's modulus and the density, and we've tried to calculate out the frequencies, which is not that bad to do. Actually, Onshape's variables really make it pretty straightforward. But this is my D5 chime. Okay, so next thing I want to do is determine where those hang points are, and that is calculated by frequency. And so I'm going to create a sketch on the front plane. I usually use holes when I'm talking about using fasteners, but in this case, we're just going to drill a hole to put some string through. So we really don't need a hole because holes deal with fastener sizes and etc. Anyway, I'm going to just add a circle onto that point. Okay, and I'm going to dimension from the end to the center. Okay, and this length for the frequency is 22.5% of the overall length. That is the calculation that we use for frequencies. So I'm going to type in 0.225 times L, and I get the hashtag length. Okay. Let's make this whole diameter much smaller, and let's see here. I don't mind that one. Let's use 3/8 of an inch as my drill size. Okay. And I can take that sketch, and I can take that hole, and I can mirror it over my plane. And now I've got holes on either side that I can extrude, removing symmetric through all. Okay, fantastic. So I have here one chime, the D5 chime, and it has steel signed, and we can even add a nice little silver appearance, and we have this beautiful chime. But I don't want one chime. I want a lot of chimes. So that is where the configuration panel is so powerful. And I'm going to configure this part. And the first one I'm going to do is really just the length. I shouldn't have to worry about the hole locations. Those should go with it. So what I'm going to do is take the length value, right click, configure. Okay. And I said that this, okay, that's good. This was our D5. Okay. And that was 19.5 inches. So what I can do now is I can take my lookup chart, and I can say that an E5 is going to be 18 plus 3/8 of an inch. Okay. And I can say that F5 is going to be 17 7/8. Okay. And you'll see over here now I have this configuration list. So I have E5 and F5. Okay. Ta-da! So other options that we can use with the configuration table, and we can actually take this and we can export it into we can copy it into Excel, make some modifications, get all of these values in a nice Excel table, and bring them in. Okay. We can also add a checkbox. I love using configuration checkboxes for all sorts of things, but let's just call this holes. And yes is default, so yes is what we want. Okay, but I can go into extrude 2, and you know what? I'm actually going to include the sketch too, so that disappears when the extrude's not there. Right click, dynamic suppression, holes. So when I come up to my configurations, I say no holes. Oh, I haven't updated my sketch here. All right, hold on. Let's go back to, okay, so default, we have holes. Not selected, we don't have holes. So now I have an F5 without holes, and I have an E5 with holes. Okay. And again, we could also go into our configuration input, and we could add another row that might have the outer diameter and get different material lengths or diameters for different chimes. So that's really cool that I can have these variations within this particular part. But what's exciting, and you know what, I'm going to add a D4 and just get this a different size. So we're going to go 27 plus 9/16. Okay, so let's see the D4. Okay. Much bigger. D5. There we go. So when I go into the assembly, what's great here is I can bring in my chime, and I can say I want a D5. And so generate the part. There it is. Okay. But I also want a D4, and we're going to generate that part. We're going to add that one in. Okay. So one part studio. And you know what? Let's call this chimes. And we got those variations. So they're both called part one, which can be kind of confusing when you're trying to select, you're trying to see which one to pick. So let's go back into Chimes and let's find the part name. Custom feature. There we are, part name config. Okay, and we just need, actually, let's go with 3. Okay. String 1 is going to be configure with configuration. Oh, that reminds me of something. Part 2 is going to be chime. And part 3 is going to be configure with holes. Okay. And the part is part 1. There we go. So right now we got blank, chime, blank. When I go back to my configuration panel, I can, first thing I want to do is select chime note. I want to change the name from configuration to chime note. There we go. So now I have a string to add. And I'm just going to copy this information. And again, this would be easier in Excel. And then over here, I'm going to say with holes. And up here, I'm going to say no holes. Okay, so we have D5 chime with holes, and we have D4 chime no holes. And if I come over to my assembly, let's change this one. Ooh, I just thought of one more thing you really might want to see. I want to change my configuration, and I don't want holes, so we'll generate that, and we'll update. Okay. All right, so this last thing I think you might want to see is, let's go ahead and add the holes back on. And I want to show sketch 2. So sometimes that sketch point might be challenging to kind of grab, but it's usually where you want to assemble it. So we're going to add a make connector onto that point. Okay, and instead of making it owned by the surface, we're going to make the owner the chime part. Okay. And then we'll add another one. So we have a connection at the bottom if we need it. So we'll add a make connector here. Okay, again, not the surface of the sketch, but rather the part itself. All right, so E5, F5. Now I'm afraid when I turn off holes, it's going to disappear. So I guess that makes sense that we don't have the make connectors there if we don't have holes to put them through. So a couple of things to think about. We can either unconfigure the sketch. Okay, so now if I hide the holes, the make connectors will stay there. Or I could say, you know what, those make connectors are really only going to be necessary when I have the holes. So maybe we configure the sketch and the make connectors. Okay. So if we don't have the holes, we don't have the make connectors. If we do have holes, we do have make connectors. So there is a very brief introduction into a simple part with variables, with configurations, with how to bring them into assemblies and use them as separate parts. And I hope it helps. And I'll be back with more soon. Thanks.